Welcome to the Thursday edition of Walking to Maturity. I'm Uncle John. Today we start a new series, The 9 Gifts of the Spirit. And once again, all the course material comes from Satellite Bible College International in Hillcrest. I have added some additional scriptures myself for clarity and insight. And all scriptures come from the NIV unless otherwise indicated. If you want to note, you can get them from the church. And if you have any questions for me, you may contact me at equipbiblecollege@gmail.com. And remember, the episodes, the courses are on both Tuesdays and Thursdays on YouTube, Walking to Maturity. And if you're subscribed, you will get a reminder. So the playlist so far, and I found the playlist is the easiest way just to find all the videos, all the episodes. The first one is our relationship with God. The second one, walking with God. And the one episode that we've just completed is the Holy Spirit. So those three are already complete. And then Series 4, the 9 Gifts of the Spirit, is starting today. And then Series 201, Lessons or Teachings from the Gospel of John, is ongoing, but it's almost complete. So today what we're looking at is Series 4, the 9 Gifts of the Spirit. And the first episode is entitled Love Must Cover All. And our introduction, before speaking about the wonderful manifestations of the Spirit, it is important to know that there is one of them that makes all the others valuable and powerful. And our illustration, it is like yeast in bread, it must be everywhere. Without it, the bread will be as hard as a stone and useless. So the question is, what manifestation are we talking about? And the answer, it is love. And as we go on and we discuss the 9 Gifts of the Spirit, I realize that it's quite a daunting subject and it's quite forbidding, and some of it might seem a little bit negative, but it's not meant to be. Sometimes the negative is just shown to illustrate the positive. And we actually start with what seems to be a negative statement, and it's a divine warning that we see in 1 Corinthians 13 and verse 1 to 3. And Paul wrote, "If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing." So here he's talking about prophecy, about knowledge, and about faith. And he's saying without love, it's all just meaningless. He has nothing. So if I had all these wonderful gifts and performed all these powerful things, but did not have love, it would actually profit nothing. I would just be a useless noisemaker. So the question is, what kind of love are we talking about? And what we're talking about is divine love, also called the fruit of the Spirit. So we want to consider that the fruit of the Spirit is love. And because a true divine love contains a number of qualities, we're actually going to take a look at them. And there's 8 that we're actually going to look at. And what we're going to take a look at is the fruit of the Spirit that we see in Galatians 5 and verse 22 to 23. That's joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And what we're going to look at each one in relation to is the divine or agape love that we see in 1 Corinthians 13 and verse 1 to 8. So joy, first of all. When we have joy, it always rejoices with the truth. And then as far as peace is concerned, we are not easily angered, and peace always trusts. Patience, indeed, love is patient. What about kindness? Love is kind. And in relation to goodness, goodness keeps no record of wrongs and delights not in evil. Faithfulness, faithfulness always trusts, hopes, and perseveres. And in gentleness, gentleness is not proud, rude, or egotistic. And then what about self-control? It is patient and not eagerly angered. So when we consider these 8 fruits of the Spirit in addition to love, it's like an orange. An orange is one, yet it contains 8 distinct pieces, as we've seen these 8 fruits. So we realize that the fruit of the Spirit indeed is love. And it's not a product of our own human nature, because our nature is evil. So I'm not trying to highlight all the negatives in this episode, but yes, they do occur, and we need to be aware of them. So unfortunately, our nature is evil, as we see in Romans 3 and verse 10 to 12. And then 17 to 18. As it is written, there is no one righteous, not even one. There is no one who understands. There is no one who seeks God. All have turned away. They have together become worthless. There is no one who does good, not even one. So that seems quite an indictment of humankind. And in verse 17, the way of peace they do not know. There is no fear of God before their eyes. And we look at our own nature, and we go further, and we can see that it only produces evil, as we see in Galatians 5 and verse 21. And unfortunately, it's very good at disguising things so that evil looks good, but the deepest motive is always selfish. So that has been the devil's way of operating from the beginning, that to make the evil things look good. But of course, it's never what it appears to be. So what we need to do is to consider the fruit of the Spirit. And when the Holy Spirit, is given control, He will produce His fruit in us and through us. And let's look at Romans 5 and verse 5. God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. And when that happens, something occurs in us. Fruit actually develops. And the more the Holy Spirit is allowed to take control and flow, the more the wonderful fruit of the Spirit will develop in your life. So it's not something that we can actually do by ourselves. It's something that's going to occur through the moving of the Holy Spirit. But unfortunately, negative continues, and we see that there is still an inner conflict. And what we see is that the sinful nature, our sinful nature and the Holy Spirit are in conflict with each other, and they both want to produce their fruit. Our sinful nature wants to produce its fruit. The Holy Spirit wants to produce His fruit in our lives. So let's look at the New Living Translation in Galatians 5 and verse 17. The sinful nature wants to do evil, which is just the opposite of what the Spirit wants. And you remember Paul said how he wanted to do good, but he did the things that he didn't want to do. And then continuing, and the Spirit gives us desires that are the opposite of what the sinful nature desires. These two forces are constantly fighting each other, so you're not free to carry out your good intentions. And I remember somebody once said, well, which one is it? Which one that actually wins out? Is it your sinful nature, or is that the Holy Spirit? And it's basically what it comes down to, is it the one that you give the most attention and the most time to. And now what we need to do is to just look to see about the will of the person. The will of the person has to choose who to flow with. So it's a constant choice. Who are you going to go with? Your sinful nature, or are you going to go with the flowing and the moving of the Holy Spirit? And in the New Living Translation in Galatians 5 and verse 16, Paul says, So I say, let the Holy Spirit guide your lives. And we really do need to do that. It may be hard, but we need to do it. Then you won't be doing what your sinful nature craves. And we need to let the Holy Spirit guide us all the time. And in Galatians 5 and verse 25, since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step, or walk with the Spirit. So let us keep in step with Him day by day as we walk through our lives. Our second main point is the result of love. And as a result of love, you will actually fulfill all of God's requirements. And in Matthew 22 and verse 35 to 40, we see an account of Jesus speaking to the Pharisees. And one of them, who was an expert in the law, tested Him with this question, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus replied, Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commands. So it seems so easy. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. When you stop to think of it, no, we can't actually do that in our own strength. And what about loving our neighbor as ourselves? It can be pretty difficult at times. But it was what Jesus said. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Now, let's look at Galatians 5 and verse 14. For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. If we truly do that, then we'll be keeping in step with the Holy Spirit. And you will bear the mark of a true servant of the Lord. In Matthew 7 and verse 16, Matthew says, you will know them by their fruit. And you remember what Jesus also said, the way that we would be known as his disciples, by the love that we shared for each other. And we wouldn't be known by the other external things or what we said, would be known by our love for each other, and they would be able to say, there is a disciple of Jesus. So we realize that our lives will glorify God if we walk in step with the Spirit. And in John 15 and verse 8, Jesus says, this is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. And I want to consider that fruit, that the divine agape love in the next few verses, John 15 and verse 9 to 12, which is the fruit of the Spirit, and that will glorify God. And we read that Jesus says, as the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this, so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. My command is this, love each other as I have loved you. So we realize possibly the tremendous love that Jesus has for us, and that's the way that he told us to love each other. And he says, you will be blessed with a wonderful, powerful life and ministry. And we go back to 1 Corinthians 13 that I mentioned at the beginning of this lesson. If all the activities are worthless without agape love, then if they are produced through real agape love, they would be extremely valuable and effective. And in 1 Corinthians 12 and verse 31, Paul mentions the most excellent way, and he says, now I eagerly desire the greater or the best gift, and yet I will show you the most excellent way. And love is the most excellent way to function in all the spiritual gifts mentioned in chapter 14 of 1 Corinthians. So our memory verse for today, 1 Corinthians 14 and verse 1. Follow the way of love and eagerly desire gifts of the Spirit, especially prophecy. So finally we come to the teacher's notes, and we realize that divine love is the highest form of love. Only the Holy Spirit, who is God, can pour it into and through our lives. And the Greek language used in the Bible has 3 words for love. The first one is philia, which means soulish love. Second is eros, which means physical love. And the third one, agape, that we've been speaking about, agape love, means divine love. And in Galatians 5 and verse 22, the word agape is used. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace. So that's that agape love. And also in 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter. Right, so next Thursday we'll be looking at Introduction to the Gifts of the Spirit. And remember, on Tuesdays we still have the lessons from the Gospel of John. So God bless you, and see you all next week. Goodbye.